Hi players, bonjour from Paris, my name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today I'm going to show you how to play March of the Ants and the expansions by Ryan Swisher and Tim Eisner. Before we're getting started, I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for already passing my first milestone of 100 subscribers. It means the world to me. I know that in terms of YouTube it's not crazy, but hey, we all gotta start somewhere, right? So as a thank you, I would like to do a free giveaway of Vital Lacerda's The Gallerist. What you need to do, just leave me a comment on this video or on the next one where I will do a full review of March of the Ants, and by the end of the month, May of 2023, I will just pull a name out of the hat and will send it to you anywhere in the world. But let's go back to the game. March of the Ants is a 4x game in which each player is going to take the role of an ant colony and will do different things like evolution, like exploring, like fighting, like harvesting, and all of that in order to score the most victory points and be declared, what a surprise, as the winner. As always, if you learned something new or if you saw something that you like, please consider subscribing to my channel and help me grow this amazing community on our way to go to 500 subscribers. Like and comment on the video, let me know what did you like less, and let me know if there's a game that you would like me to do a video about. It will be absolutely a pleasure. Ready to be the best ant colony and win the Meadow? Let's go to setup. The first thing that we will do is to place the Great Tunnel at the center of the game area. Now pay attention that there are two sides for this. One side is for a solo and two-player game, but we're going to use obviously the other side since this is going to be a three-player setup. Then we're going to place the score track on the side of the play area, and we'll give each player a nest mat. Now pay attention that there are two sides to this nest mat. One of them is for a normal ant. This is to have a completely symmetrical game, and it is recommended if this is one of the first few games that you have that you will use this side. And on the other side, it's for another variant of the game. Then we're going to give to each player all the components in their desired color. Each player will take 5 cubes and will put it over here in the lava chamber. One additional cube in the Great Tunnel, and their play marker at the starting square on the score track. The rest of the components are going to stay right next to each player. Each player also is going to take 2 food and is going to put it right here on the food store. Next, we will take all the cards, we'll give them a good shuffle, and we're going to deal 2 cards to each player. Then we're going to take the standard hex tiles, which are this with a black frame around them. We're going to give them a good shuffle, and we're going to put them also at the player area. Pay attention that if this is one of the first games that you're having, it is recommended to take out the hexes numbered 21 to 25. Then we're going to shuffle the starting hexes, which are the hexes with a golden yellow frame. We're going to give them a good shuffle, and then we're going to take randomly 2 per player. So 2, 4, 6. The other 2 we can bring back to the box. And these tiles go right here on top of the standard hexes. The rest of the tokens, the centipede and the wormholes, and also the food tokens, we're going to put next to the playing area. Then we're going to take the round marker and put it in the Great Tunnel hex on round 1, which is right over here. Now we'll need to select the starting player and give them the active player marker. And since Mr. Chouette was the last one who won Terraforming Mars, he's going to be the one that is going to be the first player. Each game of March of the Ants consists 4 phases. The main phase, which is worker phase, then we'll have the soldier phase, after that the queen phase, and the slumber phase. We're going to start the game, of course, from the worker phase. In this phase, starting with the first player and going clockwise around the table, players are going to choose one of these actions that is stated over here. For every action that one of the players is going to do in his turn, all the other players will be able to do something that is called a reaction. So it is only logic that we will start explaining what are the different actions that each player will be able to take in his turn. Let's start with the first action, which is explore. In this action, a player will pay 1 food from their food store in order to have the explore action. When we explore, we're going to draw and place 1 hex adjacent to a hex where we already have an ant. So now it will be a great time to tell you guys that when we have over here some cubes in the larva chamber, they're still considered to be larvas and not ants. But the moment that we have one of these cubes in the Great Meadow, and it doesn't matter if it's on the Great Tunnel or in another hex, it automatically becomes an ant. So let's say that for his first action, Mr. Shwed decided to explore. He's going to pay 1 food to the general supply, to draw 1 hex, and put it adjacent to a hex that already has one of his ants. Of course, the Great Tunnel considered to be a hex for this matter. As you can see over here, we have these white icons that actually stimulates a tunnel. Over here in the Great Tunnel, we also have these white markers that simulates a tunnel also. When we are putting a hexagon, we need to make sure that we have at least one possible way to move from the hex or from the Great Tunnel to the new hex, which means that if I would have put the hex like this, it will be illegal since we don't have a tunnel that will connect me to the new hexagon. So I can put this hex anywhere that I want as long as we have at least one tunnel that connects between the hexes. After we have placed the tile, we have to move at least one ant from an adjacent hex to the newly discovered hexagon. Don't forget that, of course, first we can draw a hex, and only after we can decide from which hex we want to explore. When we've placed the new ant, we immediately need to put our ant in one of these places. So let's talk about a little bit the anatomy of these hexagons. This, for example, is considered to be a collection site. Over here, at the end of the round, if the ant is still there, we will gain 1 food. Over here, we will receive another larva. And over here, we will receive 2 larvae. What is special in this one is that this is considered to be a control collection site. And if our ant is going to be right over here, that means that we are right now controlling this hexagon. We can have also other icons like cards or colony points, which are actually the victory points. And we can also have 2 different things that are wormholes or centipedes, but we'll talk about it a little bit later when we'll discover the appropriate hex. And that's it. That's the action that Mr. Shwed did. Now, the 2 other players will be able to perform something that's called a reaction. In this case, each other player may place 1 larva from their larva chamber onto any hex they inhabit or into the Great Tunnel. But of course, the 2 other players don't have other hexagons that they inhabit. They only now situated in the Great Tunnel. So they will be able, as a free action, as a reaction, to take 1 larva from their chamber if they wish to. It's not mandatory, and put it in the Great Tunnel. If one of the players, for example, doesn't have any larva in their larva chamber, they cannot take this reaction. Let's move on to the second action that is called March. In this action, players will pay 1 food in order to move up to 5 steps, also moving larva from the larva chamber to the Great Tunnel, or from the Great Tunnel or from other hexes to adjacent connected hexes. Pay attention that first of all we need to move any number that we want of larva into the meadow, and only then we can move the ants in the meadow. But once we moved some ants in the meadow, we cannot go back and take larva and put it in the meadow. So what does it mean to move 5 steps? 5 steps means to move from one hexagon to another one that is adjacent to, or from the larva chamber into another hexagon that they inhabit, or to the Great Tunnel. Now that Mr. Shwed has finished his turn, he's going to take the active player token and will pass it 1 player clockwise. So now Mr. Cactus will want to perform this action of March. Again, he needs to pay 1 food from the food stores that he has to the general supply, and now he can do this action. So let's say, for example, that he's going to move 1 step from the larva chamber to the Great Meadow. Second step, again the same thing. And now he wants to move 2 ants from the Great Tunnel to the newly discovered hexagon. So he's going to move 1, but when he moves, he has to occupy a collection site if 1 is available. So here we have 2. He can choose where he wants to go. So let's say that he's going to occupy this collection site right over here. And the fifth step will be to move this ant again to this hexagon, occupying this collection site, which is also a control collection site. So right now, Mr. Cactus controls this hexagon. As a reaction, each other player may move one ant one step. And this is very important to remember that it has to be one ant, so it cannot be a larva going from the larva chamber to the Great Meadow. Onion Man would like to take this reaction, and he's going to move one ant into this newly discovered hex. As you can see right now, there is no a collection site that is open, so his ant is considered to be in something that is called the outskirts of the hexagon. Right now, this hexagon is considered to be contested, but this is something that we'll talk about a little bit later when we'll talk about the soldier phase. Mr. Chouette decides that he doesn't want to move any one of his ants, so he's passing this reaction. Let's talk about the third action that we can take, which is Forage. In this action, a player will play one food in order to draw two cards, right here from this deck. Onion Man in his turn would like to take exactly this action, so he's going to take one food from his food stores, pay to the general supply, and take two cards from this deck. As a reaction, each other player may gain one larva. So that's pretty much of a given, right? Because why wouldn't I take one larva? And that's also important to remember that if you don't have any more cubes next to your playing area, you cannot put larva into the larva chamber. That means that you cannot take a cube that you don't have. The next action that we can take is to play a card. For this action, we're going to pay either ants or larva. So I think this will be an amazing time to show you which kind of cards we have in this game. The first type of card that we have is an evolution card, and we can identify it by the green frame that it has around it. So let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of cards. At the top, we can see what kind of a card is it, so we can see it's an evolution. Under it, we're going to have the title of the card, which is Marching Thorax. On the right, we're going to have the cost of this card. So here we see that we can pay either two larvae or two ants. And under it, we're going to have the text of the card. When you march, you may move two additional steps. When another player marches, you may move one of your ants one additional step. So what is an evolution card basically? We have three kinds of evolution card. Each type of an evolution card is actually going to go with one of the parts in the ant. So the thorax, as you can see with these two icons, matching the middle part of the ant. The other two parts are the head and the abdomen. But right now, let's concentrate only on this card, since this is what Mr. Chouette is going to play in his turn. Right now we're seeing that Mr. Chouette has only one ant in the meadow, so he will not be able to pay two ants in order to play this card. But he does have 6 larvae, so he can pay 2 larvae in order to play it. So he's going to take 2 larvae from his larva chamber, put these 2 cubes in his supply, and with that he can play this card. This card is not going to be activated right now. Instead, it's going to give us a certain bonus to other actions. In this case, it's going to give us a bonus when we're going to have a march action or a reaction to march. Also, if you can see right here at the bottom of the nest pad, we have some text, so let's read it. When you march, you may move 1 additional step per thorax evolution. So we also understand that this evolution card doesn't have to be the final one. We can also play more cards on top of it. What we need to remember is every time we're going to play another card of evolution in that specific part of the ant, so let's say that I played this card right over here, the bonus, the special one, will be only the top card that we have in this part of the ant. But the bonus that is written right here is per card that he has. So leave aside the special bonus of this evolution, but right now what Mr. Chouette knows is that every time he will perform march, he will be able to move 2 additional steps because he has 2 thorax evolution cards. Mr. Chouette has finished his turn and is going to pass the marker to Mr. Cactus. Mr. Cactus also wants to play a card, and Mr. Cactus will play an event card. So we can recognize it by the red frame that we have around it. And let's talk about the anatomy of this card also. So again, we see the type of the card, which is an event card. Under it, we see the title, Epic Cannibalism. On the right, we see the cost, which means we're going to pay for it 3 ants. And at the bottom, we have the text that says, gain 2 food. This card's cost must be paid with ants. They're really emphasizing it here because on most of the cards, you'll be able to pay it either with ants or with larvae. But in this specific cards, they insist that you will pay only with ants. So basically what's going to happen is that Mr. Cactus is going to play this event card. He's going to pay now 3 ants. Now, as we can see, Mr. Cactus has 5 ants in the meadow. He can take any 3 ants that he wishes in order to play this card. So Mr. Cactus will take these 3 ants right here from the meadow, will put it back in his supply, and now he will play this card, and that means that he basically consumed 3 friends in order to have 2 more food. So he's taking 2 more food and he's going to put it in his food store. After we finish dealing with this card, we're going to discard the event into the discard pile that we're going to create right over here. Before I forget, it's super important because I a little bit skipped it with Mr. Shwet, that every time a player is playing a card as an action, the other players are able to take a reaction. In this case, each other player may discard a card from their hand to draw another card. So let's say that Mr. Cactus right now played the event card. Onion Man decides to throw this card over here, so he's going to discard it face up in order to draw another card into his hand. Mr. Cactus has finished his turn and passing the marker into Onion Man, and in his turn he's going to also play a card. What a surprise! And that will be the last type of card that we have, which is a colony goal. So we already know that this is a colony goal, right? Because this is what we're talking about. You can identify it by the blue frame that it has. Under it, we have the title of this card, which is Grand Evolution. And now we see that we can pay either with 2 larvae or with 2 ants. What is special about this card is that once we play it, we're going to put it on the side of the board, right over here where it says Stashed Colony Goals, and we have a limit of 2. And we're going to score points for this card at one of the last phases. So this card, even if it says Stashed Colony Goals, it's going to be visible to all the players, and Onion Man will decide to pay 2 larvae for it. So he's going to take 2 larvae from his chamber and put it in his supply. And right now he has a colony goal. This colony goal says that when played, draw a card. So first of all, when he played it, he's going to draw another card. And after that, each slumber, you gain 1 colony point, right? 1 victory point. If you have more evolution than 1 neighbor, or 2 points if you have more evolution than each neighbor. So at the end of this round, when we'll talk about Slumber, Onion Man is going to score 1 point if he has more evolution cards on his ants than one of his neighbors, either Mr. Shwet or Mr. Cactus, and he's going to get 2 points if he has more evolution cards from both of the other players. The last action that we can take is called Rest. Now, usually players will take this action if they don't have any more food, or basically if they don't have more actions that they can do, like playing cards or something else. They don't have to do it, but this is going to be usually the case. What's important to remember is that players may not choose to rest as their first action each round. Now, since Mr. Shwet is the active player, he decides that he doesn't want to do anything else in this turn. Of course, it's ill-advised, but we're not here to give advices to the coolest owl in the world. So the first time that the player rests, he's going to put 1 larva in this area, as you can see the drawing right over here. So he will take 1 cube from his supply and he's going to put it right over here. It's very important to remember that once a player has rested, that is their action until another player will perform rest, and they cannot do something else. So let's say that Mr. Shwet right now performed this action. The active player token is going to move to Mr. Cactus. He's going to perform something, and then Onion Man is going to perform something, and then it's going to come back again to Mr. Shwet. But Mr. Shwet cannot now take another action besides resting, so what he will have to do is to take one food token right now from the general supply and put it right over here in this area, as you can see. And as you already understood correctly, if it's going to happen again, then again Mr. Shot will take one food from the general supply and will put it in this space right over here. Now when a second player is going to take a rest action, this is when the worker phase is going to be finished and will continue to the soldier phase. So let's say right now that Mr. Cactus also decided to rest. We're going to flip this token from this symbol to this symbol, to the moon symbol, and we're going to put it right over here next to the player that decided to rest, because after we're going to resolve the other phases, we're going to have Mr. Cactus be the active player at the new worker phase. Also important to remember that when you have the second player who's going to perform the rest action, also he's going to receive one larva to put over here in this place. When the worker phase is finished, the player who has resources in this area is allowed to take it to the food store and to the larva chamber. Now we'll continue to the soldier phase, and in this phase we're going to resolve all the combat that we have in all the contested hexagon. So let's break it down and understand what is a contested hexagon. A contested hexagon is when we have two or more players present in a hex and there are more ants than collection sites. So right over here we see that we have 4 ants, right? 3 of them occupy a collection site, but 1 of them is on the outskirts, and that means that this hex is considered to be contested. So if, for example, this red ant wouldn't have been in this hex, it wouldn't be considered as a contested hexagon, because each ant that we have in this hexagon, even though they belong to two different factions, all of them are inhabiting a collection site. Battles in contested hexagon will start from the lowest number. So right now we have only 1, so it doesn't really matter, and it is number 5. But let's say that here I would have had another contested hexagon and its number is 2, for example, then we would have started the battle from here and only after that resolve the battle over here. Before battle occurs, we need to see around the table if any player has a head evolution with text that is going to affect the battle, and we need to resolve it. 2 other things to remember before the battle. First of all is that the defender player is the player that inhabits the control site. Right over here we have Mr. Cactus that inhabits the control site, and the other player is considered to be the invader. If 3 or more players are present in a contested hex, the invading player is the player with the most ants in that hex. And of course, in case of a tie, the defender chooses which player is the invader. So let's dive right into the battle. In order for us to understand who is the winner, we need to calculate 2 things. First of all is the army strength, is the number of actual ants that we have right now on the hexagon, which is for Mr. Cactus 2 and for Onion Man it's only 1. To that number we're going to add all the head evolution cards that those players have. So let's say, just for the example, that Onion Man has 3 of those. Right now the army strength is actually for Mr. Cactus only 2, and for Onion Man it's 1 plus 3, which makes it 4. Then we're going to see also the ferocity. What does it mean? In this case, each player can discard one of their cards facing down, and here actually we're going to understand what is the meaning of the number that we're having right over here, and that is the ferocity of that player. They're going to reveal the 2 cards together and going to add those number into the army strength that they already have. So right now we're going to have 1 plus 3, it's 4, plus 3, it's already 7. And for poor Mr. Cactus, he's going to have 1, 2, and 3. So obviously the winner in this case is Onion Man. Now let's jump into casualties. So those 2 cards, after we already know who is the winner, are not important and we can discard them. After the battle, the loser, in this case it's going to be Mr. Cactus, loses ants equal to the army strength of the winner. So we already know that the army strength of Onion Man is 4. 4 obviously bigger than 2, so Cactus is going to lose both of his ants. The winner loses ants equal to half the army strength of the loser, rounded down. So Mr. Cactus had army strength of 2, and that means that Onion Man is supposed to lose 1 ant. But wait just one moment, because in this case, if we have only 1 ant and it needs to be destroyed, we have something that is called a lone survivor. If all the winner's ants would be lost, their last ant is not lost. Now we're going to have a few things that are going to happen. First of all, Onion Man has won the battle, and that means that he's going to receive a victory point. The second thing is that the player who won can't move all the ants that are already present in the contested hex to inhabit any empty collection sites. Right now we have this ant of Onion Man that was on the outskirts. It's going to move automatically to one of these 2 collection sites to the player choice. If, for example, he would have had more ants in this contested hexagon, then after the fight, another ant would have come here and 2 ants would have been left in the outskirts. Now, 2 specific players will battle each other only once per contested hex per soldier phase, even if the hex continues to be contested after the battle has resolved. So let's say, for example, that we would have had, after the fight, 3 more ants here. We already declared the winner, we already took the casualties, but still this is the situation. Another fight between Onion Man and Cactus would not happen. But with that, after an ant battle is resolved in a specific hex, if there are ants present from a player who did not participate in the initiate battle and the hex is still contested, we're going to have another battle that will take place. Of course, we remember that Onion Man is the invader and Mr. Chouette is going to try and defend itself. After we have finished all the battles, it's time to go to the Queen's phase. And before we're going to do anything in the Queen's phase, we need to check all the abdomen evolution cards, because on some cards we're going to have something that is going to affect this phase. In this card, for example, the Honeypot Abdomen Evolution card, we're going to see that at the start of the Queen phase, choose 1 collection site that you inhabit. During harvest, collect resource from that site twice. Now let's say that Mr. Chouette would have had this evolution card, then he needs to choose only 1 place. In this case, it's super easy because he only inhabits 1 collecting site. And when it's time to harvest, that means to take the resources, he would have received double from what it says over here on the hex. In this case, it's 2 food. So now, of course, it's time to harvest. Players are going to take resources from each collection site that they have ants inhabiting that specific space. So in this case, Mr. Cactus is not going to take anything because he doesn't have ants at all on the board. Mr. Chouette, seeing that he has this evolution card, is going to take 2 food from the main supply and is going to put it on the food stores. And Mr. Onion sees that he has here 2 ants. That means he's going to take here 3 larvae. He's going to take it from his main supply and going to put it in the larva chamber. After that, we will need to feed our ants, our brave warriors. So what happens is that for each up to 4 ants that a player has on the board, he will need to consume 1 food. If you don't have enough food to feed all of your ants, let's say, for example, that Onion Man has 5 ants over here, and right now he doesn't have food at all. So for each ant that he cannot feed, he will have to consume 1 larva. If on top of that, let's say that you don't have not food and not larva, you will need to destroy the ants that you cannot feed anymore. I want to draw your attention again to the abdomen evolution cards, because right here it states, during the Queen phase, each food feeds 1 additional ant per abdomen evolution. After that, we're going to do the last thing in the Queen's phase, and that is the Royal Decree. In this case, each player is going to decide whether the Queen is going to give it some larva or some food. So basically, either to take 2 food from the main supply into their food stores, or to receive 5 larvae into their larva chamber. The last thing that we will do before starting another round with the worker phase is the Slumber. In this phase, Each player is going to receive 1 colony point, that means 1 victory point, for each inner meadow hex that they control. Inner meadow hexes are basically all the hexes that are directly attached to the Great Tunnel. And in order to control those hexes, an ant needs to be over here in the control collection site. Then we'll see if we can take more points from all the colony goals that we have next to our board. After that, we're going to advance the round marker 1 step forward. And the next round begins. The player with the active token is going to flip it from the moon side to the sun side, and another round will begin with the worker phase. Now let's talk about 2 things that we haven't seen yet, and that is the wormholes and the centipedes. On some tiles that we're going to draw, we're going to have this icon of a wormhole. So let's say, for example, that someone drew this hex and put it right here. And let's say that in another occasion, we drew another hex with a wormhole in it. All the wormholes are connected. What does it mean? It means that 2 hexagons that have a wormhole are considered to be adjacent. With 1 step, an ant can go from 1 hexagon to another one in case that they have wormholes. And we're going to have some different cards that sometimes are going to allow us to put a wormhole. So in this case, we're going to take one of these tokens and we're going to place it on hexagon that we want, or whatever the card has told us to do. The other thing that we haven't seen yet is a hexagon with a centipede on it. So let's say, for example, that we have this hex right over here. The moment that we saw this icon right over here, we need to take a token and put it right over here with the centipede facing up. That means that we're going to have an active centipede that we will combat later on. Now, a hexagon with a centipede is considered to be contested immediately. No, it does not mean that we're going to have the fight right now, but that means that even if we have here enough spaces for ants to inhabit the different collection sites, still this hex is considered to be contested, and the specific faction will fight this centipede at the soldier phase. So first of all, a centipede is always considered to be the invader. In this case, to determine the army strength of the centipede, we're going to discard facing up a card from the deck, and we can see that the army strength that the centipede has is 3. The army strength of Mr. Cactus right now is only 2. After that, Mr. Cactus can decide to discard the card that he has in his hand in order to see what is the ferocity that he will have in this battle. The centipede then discard a second card from the top of the deck, adding the number that we have over here, in this case it's 4, to its base army strength. So right now we see that we have 7 against poor Mr. Cactus only 5, and that means that Mr. Cactus has lost. If he would have won, then the centipede would have been destroyed completely. We would have just removed this token from the board directly back to the main supply. And in this case, Mr. Cactus would have gained 1 food and 1 victory point. And just like in a normal combat, even though he lost, the player who battled it loses ants equal to half of the centipede's army strength, and of course rounded down. After the last slumber in the 4th phase, the game is finished and it's time to calculate the points, see who is the winner. So on top of victory points that we're going to have from battles, colony points and cards, which are victory points that we're going to add during the game itself, there are a few other things that are going to score for us victory points. First of all, the first time that we're completing a full evolution of an ant, and that means head, body, and abdomen, this is immediately going to score for us 3 victory points. Even during the game, you don't have to wait for it until the end. Each time that we're going to have another set of head, body, and abdomen, we're going to score another 3 points. At the end of the game, we're going to see who has the largest brood, and that means who has the most larvae in their larva chamber. That player is going to score 3 colony points. We're going to see who has the greatest stores. That means who has the most food in their food stores. That player also is going to score 3 points. And we're going to see what is the untold potential, and that means that the player who has the most cards in their hands also is going to score 3 victory points. After we see all the victory points that are going to be added, the player with the most victory points is going to be the winner. In case of a tie, the player with the most ants in the meadow is going to be the winner, and if again we have a tie, then all the ants are going to hold hands and go towards the sunset peacefully. Here I'm going to explain the base expansion and also 2 other modules out of the 3. First of all, because I think they are the cooler ones, but also I don't want to make the video too long, so we'll keep it just for the 2. And the third one you can learn on your own. Of course, it will be much easier after you get the basics of the game. In terms of setup, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, each player is going to get 2 major workers that is going to put at his supply. So we have over here the yellow, the red, and the blue major workers. After that, we'll need to add to the main deck all the cards from the expansion that have this gray logo at the bottom part of them. We're just going to shuffle them into the main deck. And also, as you can see, we added an extension to the player's boards. So as you already saw, the main thing that we're going to have here are the major workers. So first of all, in the extension of the player boards, we can see that in order for us to place a major worker into the meadow, we need to do an action. This action is called breed, and we are going to pay 2 larvae or 2 ants from the meadow in order to place a major worker in a hex that we are inhabit. So that means that if, for example, Mr. Shwet over here inhabits this hexagon right over here, then he can pay in his turn 2 larvae, for example, put it back in his supply in order to put a major worker into the hexagon. As a reaction to this action, each other player may choose any reaction that they choose from the reactions to explore, march, forage, or playing a card. So basically all the reactions that we have in the base game. Important to understand that a major worker acts exactly like a simple worker when it inhabits a collection site, but it has some special powers. So the first ability that we're getting some sort of free is the rally ability. At the beginning of the soldier phase, you may place 2 larvae into each contested hex you inhabit where you have a major worker. As we can see over here, this hexagon is contested. We know that because we have 4 collection sites. 4 of them are occupied by a major worker of Mr. Shwet, a normal worker, and 2 normal workers of Onion Man. And we have another ant over here in this hexagon, but it is on the outskirts. So the rally ability is actually telling us that when we go to the soldier phase, we will be able to place 2 larvae into each contested hex that we inhabit, and that means, of course, where we have a major worker, and that means that Mr. Shwet over here will be able to take 2 larvae and put it in the contested hexagon, which now means that he has 3 normal workers and a major worker. The next 3 abilities that we have with a major worker are evolved abilities, and that means that we're going to have more abilities if we're going to evolve the different parts of the ant's body. So let's start with the first one, which is the push ability, and it says if we have an evolved head, after a major worker moves during the march action, it may push an ant into an adjacent hex and inhabit the ant's collection site. Ants on control sites and major workers cannot be pushed. So let's take another example. Over here we see that Mr. Shwet has decided to evolve in a previous round the head of the ant, and in his current turn he decides to do the march action. He decides to go with a major worker from this hexagon to this one, finishing his movement over here. The push special ability saying that after the major worker moves during the march action, as we saw right now, it may push an ant into an adjacent hex and inhabit the ant's collection site. So that's exactly what he's doing. He moved to this hexagon with a major worker, and he's going to push the ant of Onion Man to an adjacent hexagon. We already know that it can be either to this hexagon or to the Great Tunnel, and he's going to take the place in the collection site. Let's talk about the second special ability that we have, and it comes with upgrading the thorax, and it is called Scout. When a major worker explores into a hex, you may reveal an additional hex and connect it to the explored hex. Move the major worker into that hex. And that means that if Mr. Shwet wants to explore, he's going to take this hexagon, for example, going to place it right over here. Now, if it was with a normal worker, he would have had to move the one of the ants in an adjacent hexagon to the newly discovered hex. With the Scout special ability, we can take another hex and we'll be able to connect it to the newly explored hexagon. So it's right over here. Let's say that he decides to put it right over here because there is a tunnel that is connected, and the major worker would have to go to the newly discovered hex, to the second one. Moving to the third and final special ability is if we have upgraded the abdomen part of the ant, and it is called Populate. When you forage, you may place one larva per abdomen you have evolved into each hex inhabited by your major workers. So let's say, just for the example, that Mr. Shwet has 2 larvae in his larva chamber and has 2 major workers in the meadow, and also has 2 abdomen evolution cards on his ant. When he will do the forage action, which means to take 2 cards from the deck, the special ability means that he will be able to take 2 of his larvas, right, because he has 2 evolved abdomen, and put it in each hexagon that has a major worker. That's the first part of the basic expansion. The second part that we have for the basics expansion is something that is called tactics. Now, tactic cards are basically some sort of a subtype of an ant card. So let's take a look and see what kind of cards we have now. Now, tactic cards is something that we will play into battle. And based on the outcome of the battle, the player may get an additional effect. As you can already see, there is no cost for this type of cards. And this is something that we will play when we're going to add the ferocity to the basic army strength when we're going to have a combat. So the first type of card is an event tactics. And this is something that is going to give us a one-time effect, and then it's going to be discarded. Let's take a look on this card and see what it says. Play only during battle, sacrifice up to 3 larvae or ants, gain 1 ferocity for each ant or larva sacrificed. If you win, gain 1 food. So Onion Man is putting right now this kind of card. It's not a tactics card, and this is something that will add 4 ferocity. Mr. Shwet is going to put this card that adds 1 ferocity and is going to give him something as a bonus. So right now we can see that the total strength of Mr. Shwet is 2 + 1, 3, but Onion Man has 4 + 1, which is 5. So actually Onion Man should be the winner, right? Because 5 is bigger than 3. But here comes the tactics card and tell us that we can sacrifice up to 3 ants or 3 larvae in order to add to the ferocity. So Mr. Shwet has 3 larvae in his larva chamber, and he decides to sacrifice the 3 of them. Now the outcome of the battle is already different because Onion Man has 5, but Mr. Shwet has the 3 basic plus the 3 larvae that he just sacrificed thanks to the tactics card. So that is 6, and now we see that the outcome has shifted, and actually it's Mr. Shwet that is the winner. Now, because Mr. Shwet is the winner, he's going to receive the special bonus of if you win, gain 1 food. So he's going to take 1 food from the main supply and he's going to add it to his food stores. The 2 other cards are Evolution Tactic cards and Colony Goal Tactic card, and they're going to work exactly the same. So they're going to add something to our battle. Here, for example, it says gain 2 larvae and then put 2 larvae in the contested hex. But the difference between these 2 cards and the event tactic cards is that if you have won the battle, you have to play these cards. And that means that if this is an evolution card, you will have to play this evolution card onto your ant. And if this is a colony goal card, you will have to put it in the stash colony goals. Now it has some repercussions, right? Because if we had an upgrade that we really wanted, now we don't have a choice but to cover it with a new evolution card. And if we had 2 colony goals that we liked, now because we have to add the 3rd one, we need to discard one of these 2 colony goals, because as a reminder, we can have only 2 at a time. Some things to remember when we're playing this expansion, especially with the tactic cards: the Invader's tactic effect are resolved before the Defender's tactic effects. Second of all, if a tactic evolution card is drawn by a card or a hex effect that places it into the player's ant body, it has no tactic effect. And the last thing is that tactics cards may be played as the result of a card or hexagon abilities that allow us to play cards. The first module that I would like to talk to you about is called Parasites. So first of all, in order of setup, what we need to do is to shuffle these 6 Parasite cards, which are the cards from the new expansion with this red icon at the bottom of the card, and we'll shuffle it into the main deck. Parasitic evolution cards is some sort of a subtype of an evolution cards, but it comes with a twist. So instead of playing the evolution card into our ant mat, we're going to put it in an enemy's player board. So let's say as an action, Mr. Shwed decides to play this parasitic card. He's going to take this, and as we see, it's an abdomen type of card, and he's going to put it on Onionsman's, for example, a player board. So because he's the one who did this action, he's going to take 1 cube and he's going to put it over here. It's called an egg, just to symbolize that he's the one who did it. The host is the player whose nest contains now the parasitic card. So let's just read this card and see what it is all about. The parasite may harvest from one of the host's collection sites. The host still harvests from that site. So that means that when we're going to go to the queen's phase and we're going to harvest, because right now the parasite is basically Mr. Shwed, he will be able to harvest from one of the collection sites. So for example, he will gain, in addition to what he will collect, here for example we see that Onion Man is on the collection site of the food, so Mr. Shwed will be able to take that food. But Onion Man will be able to collect from that site also. So he didn't lose anything, but Mr. Shwed gained something. Even though this is a parasitic card, it's important to remember that this is still an evolution card. So that means that Onion Man, for this reason, will still be able to enjoy from the benefit of the abdomen. And because this is considered to be an evolution card, when Onion Man will complete a full ant evolution, he will still be able to score 3 victory points. So how do we get rid of this card? Super simple, we just need to do another evolution for that specific part of the ant. In this case, when Onion Man will upgrade, we'll have another evolution for the abdomen. We're going to simply take this cube back to Mr. Shwed's supply, and we're going to put the new evolution card of the abdomen on top of it. The second module that I will talk about is called Predators. Now for the setup, what we need to do is to take these 3 Predator cards that we can see has this purple icon at the bottom of the card and shuffle them into the deck. Also, we will take the 5 Predator cards and we will take randomly 2 of them, sending the other 3 back into the box. The 2 Predators that we randomly chose will need to go next to the playing area. And of course, don't forget to put the corresponding meeples on top of them. It's very important that the players will familiarize themselves with the different predators and their powers and what they can do or not do. So how do we get these predators into the meadow? As you remember, we mixed 3 predator cards into this deck. So let's say that at one point Mr. Shwed has one of these predator cards. Let's take a closer look. First of all, as we can see, this has a cost of 3 larvae or 3 ants or a mix of them. And this can also be a ferocity card of 4. Here it says, place a predator. At the beginning of the soldier phase, destroy one of your ants for each centipede in play or discard this card from play. Also it says, each slumber, gain 1 victory point and draw 1 card for each centipede in the meadow. So already understand that this is not just a predator card that allows us to put one of them into the meadow, it's also a colony goal. And that means that we're going to play this card next to our board, right here when it has the stashed colony cards. And we're going to follow what this card says. So let's start from the beginning. Place a predator. And that means that the player who played this card will need to take one of these predators and put it in the meadow. In some cards, we have a condition. For example, in this card over here, we'll need to put the predator in an outer hexagon, and that means a hexagon that is not adjacent to the Great Tunnel. So let's say that Mr. Shwet has decided to take the mantis, and he's going to put it right over here in this hexagon. So first of all, after he played it, he's going to put it right over here in his stashed colony goals. And now we're going to focus on this predator itself. Each predator has a starting health equal to 3 times the round number when it was summoned. So if, for example, Mr. Shwet has summoned it in the first round, so how are we going to do it? With this small attachment that we have over here. So what we're going to do, we're going to see here that we have a value of health between 1 and 12. Mr. Shwet has summoned it in the first round, so 3 times that, it's 3. So we're going to mark it at the number 3. Also, we see what is the power tier of the predator. So we have over here this threshold, it's the first one. Here it's the second one and the third one. And of course, the later we summon the predator, the stronger it will be. So now we'll need to read what this predator is doing, but I'm not going to go over all the predators because it's pretty easy to understand from the text, since we're already familiarized with March of the Ants. What is more important for me is to go over battles with predators. So first of all, players must choose whether to play their ferocity card after the predator reveals their first card. So the first thing that we need to do is to see what is the army strength, right? Is to discard a first card and see what is the army strength that we're having. In this case, it's 4. Now the players will need to decide if they want to discard a card from their hand in order to add the ferocity into their army strength. Then the second symbol says that we need to discard another card in order to add that to the army strength of the predator. And then the last icon says how many ants are going to be killed before we even calculate casualties. Now the casualties are going to be calculated exactly like we have in a normal ant combat, but here the difference is that when we're going to calculate the casualties for this predator, we're going to drop its health 1 per casualty. And of course, don't forget all the text that each predator has on his card. The second expansion, Emperors of the Earth, is a smaller expansion than the first one that we saw, and here we're going to actually get some new cards. So let's go over all the new cards and see what is new in the game. First of all, as a setup, we will take all these chamber cards and we're going to mix them with the main deck. Also, each player is going to receive 1 chamber that is called the Old Tunnel. Also, each player will receive 4 mutation cards. And all the other cards that we received with this expansion, we can use either as a standalone ant deck, or we can mix it also with the deck that we have from the base game. So the first card that we're going to see is called a chamber. When we're playing this card as part of playing a card action, we'll be able to pay larvae or ants in the range of the numbers that we see on the card. Here, for example, it's between 1 and 5. And because of this, the cost of the card, as we can see over here, is stated 1 plus. Don't forget, of course, that this card can be a ferocity card as well. Now, when we decided to pay the cost, let's say that Mr. Shwet has played this card and decided to pay 4 eggs as larvas, so he's taking 4 larvas from his larva chamber and is going to put it right over here on the card. And right now he has 4 eggs in this chamber. Here we can see that we'll be able to activate this in the worker phase action. And you can already guess that different chamber cards will be able to be activated in different phases. This card, that is called Explanatory Tunnel, states that we will draw a hex and place it in the meadow. Then move up to 5 ant steps. They're emphasizing the ant, so it means that we will not be able to take larva from our larva chamber and put it in the meadow, as we know we can do in a normal march action. Other players take any reaction. This card we will be able to activate when we have 5 eggs on it. Different cards have different number of eggs on it, so the number of eggs that we will need to activate it changes. When we want to activate this card, we just need to remove all the eggs from it, and then we'll be able to execute the text on it. So let's say, just for the example, that Mr. Chouette actually decided not to put 4 eggs, but decided to put 5 of them. He paid with 5 larvae. In his next worker phase, or in this worker phase, he will be able, as an action, to take all of them back to his supply and execute this action. After that, this chamber stays with us until the rest of the game. Now, how can we put more eggs on these chamber cards? So, every time a player is taking an action, the other players, as a reaction, can take 1 egg and place it over here in their chamber card. So let's say again, for example, that Mr. Chouette has 4 eggs on this card. Onion Man decided to do something, doesn't matter what, he decided to march or to play a card or whatever. As a reaction, Mr. Chouette will be able to pay 1 larva or 1 ant that he has in order to put another egg on this card. And in his turn, he will be able to activate this card if it corresponds to the phase. The chamber card that is called the Old Tunnel is something that all the players have, and they can put up to 4 eggs on it. What is special about it, that after we will activate it in the Queen's phase, we will discard it and we will not have it until the rest of the game. On the other hand, if we will decide to use the other side of the starting chamber, we'll be able to activate this card as many times as we want, of course if we have enough eggs, and this card will stay with us until the rest of the game. 2 things that are important to remember. First of all, eggs in the chambers are only going to be eggs, okay? We will not be able to use them as larvae or as ants at a later part of the game. The second type of new cards that we have in this expansion is the mutation cards. In the setup, we gave each player 4 mutation cards, and now each player before the game begins will need to choose 2 of these mutation cards to leave, and the 2 other he can put back in the box. Each mutation card is going to give us a unique bonus, but pay attention that these cards are not exactly like evolution cards, and that means that we don't have the small bonus that we have like we have in a normal evolution card. The first time that we will have an evolution card in one of these spaces, we will take this mutation card and we will throw it from the game. Also important to remember that these cards are not going to help us to complete a series of a full upgrade for the ant. And that means that even if I have here now an evolution card for the abdomen, this doesn't mean that I will be able to score the 3 points that we know from the base game, because these are not a normal evolution cards. The last type of new cards that we have in this expansion is the Queen's Decree. What we will do with these cards, at the beginning of each game, we will shuffle them, we will choose one of these cards, and we will put it in the playing area so all the players can see. This is actually going to be some sort of a public goal that all the players will try to complete. So this is basically just like a colony goal, but the points that will be rewarded will go to the player who best meets the decree criteria each slumber. So as you understood, when we will finish all the phases and we will go to the slumber, we will also check this card of the Queen's Decree and we will see who will get the points in that specific round. And that's it. That is everything that is new in this expansion. Of course, we have here some new tactic cards, but we already saw it in the last expansion, Minions of the Meadow.